So welcome everyone to our afternoon at Cosmogenetrix for Saturday, which is being started by our wonderful priestess, Rayna Templebee. Rayna Templebee is a reverend. She's a sky dancer, priestess, and a member of the Council of Wise Women here in the temple. She's also a daughter of the Ocean Mother. She's the high priestess of Beachfire Coven in Miami. She's an Aborisha in a Lukumi house under the protection of Oshun. She calls the fabulous and crazy environment of tropical Miami, Florida, her home, and she works to build earth wisdom affirming community across traditions. She holds ministerial credentials through the Covenant of the Goddess, and she offers rites of passage to queer, polyamorous, and other free-thinking humans. She's an accomplished ritualist who loves to create moments of sacredness for 1, 2, or 200 humans. Rayna was raised in a family that speaks with plants, and through gardening and beekeeping, she seeks to help heal the wound between humans and our green world. She co-founded Summer Magic Fest, which has been running since 2021, and many of us here go to that every year. It's a hotel-based convention and celebration of goddess and earth-centered spirituality in Orlando, Florida. This year, June 6th through the 9th, and raise your hand if you're going to be there, quite a few of us. So you can learn more about Priestess Rayna at raynatemplebee.com. Thank you so much for bringing this wonderful workshop, which is your moon sign as a portal to the goddess. Yay!
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming right after lunch. Hopefully you don't get too sleepy, but that was a really beautiful introduction. Thank you, Priestess Yeshe. And I am very grateful to be here to have time to talk about astrology with everybody. I just want to acknowledge that I have a guide, a very, very dear woman who taught me astrology, who's on the other side now. And so we're welcoming Donna to be part of this workshop today. And then I don't know if there's anything else I need to tell you about me, except that astrology was the first thing I did. It led me into goddess worship and paganism, etc. Was raised by hippies, so it was not a huge leap for me into the world of magic, but astrology was sort of my first love. And it's really special to me to be able to share with you. I also dedicate this workshop to Ishtar, who taught humans astrology, in my opinion, starting in the 4th century BC. Ishtar is in my mandala. She's next month. And I like to think of her as the original astrologer. Okay, so we're going to start with just a really short little meditation. If you could just get comfortable, put both feet on the floor and take a couple of deep breaths, close your eyes. I want you to reach back to your childhood and a memory you have when you saw the moon in the nighttime sky. Wherever that was a positive memory of seeing the moon in the nighttime sky. And the sense of wonder that you felt as a child to see this luminous body shining her blessings down on you. The sense of connection you might have felt being a magical person. A lot of us saw the moon as a child and felt very connected, very at home, very centered. And then just whatever emotion comes up in this memory of seeing the moon as a child, I just sit with that emotion for just a moment. Cherish it and honor it. Whether it's enjoyable and pleasant or challenging, it is a gateway into this topic of thinking about the moon. And when you're ready, you can come back here in your eyes. Okay, so what does astrology mean to you all when you hear the word?
Alignment with the stars and planets and moon and sun.
Okay. That's a tool of alignment.
Yeah, like a
Makes
tool of alignment and how to, yeah, kind of your energies. It goes with your energies that you're feeling.
Okay. Anybody else?
Helps you understand who you can be,
Mhm.
who you are,
Okay.
where you're going.
Absolutely. So again, a tool, but this time maybe to really understand yourself and
Mm.
who you might become and who you are.
Stories
Good.
and archetypes.
Stories and archetypes.
Mhm.
Jinx, not jinx.
Influence,
Good. I'm sorry.
influences,
Influences, like, tell me more. What do you mean?
Mm.
like planetary influences, like
Okay.
the energies that impact you.
Mhm.
Right. Absolutely. So as a way to understand those influences that we are subject to and move through, etc. Good. Okay. Anybody feel intimidated at all by the topic or the word of astrology?
Respectful, maybe. I feel like I associate it with destiny
Mm,
and that there are fixed points and not fixed points. And so I respect it. I wouldn't say I'm scared, although sometimes what I'm respectful of is a little scary.
Absolutely. It can seem, both as a science, it can seem overwhelming, a science and an art, but also it can feel a little heavy sometimes, the things that we know are coming or are told are coming. Okay. Well, there are many different definitions of astrology. Oh, wait, somebody over here had,
I was just gonna say, I'm too really intimidated by like reading the charts and houses and it's just a lot.
it is a lot,
Yeah.
it is a lot. The glyphs and then the degrees and there's math involved and it's graphic, yeah, it is a lot, absolutely, yeah.
Complex magic.
Complex type of magic, yeah, it can feel very structured, highly structured. So we luckily get to let a lot of that go. In this workshop, we're focusing on one little element, just the natal position of your moon. And moon is probably the most loosey-goosey of any of the astrological influences that we deal with. And I don't want you to worry too much about anything in terms of the glyphs, structure, math, or charting. You can, anybody who's interested in astrology will move into that phase and understand why it's important, but everybody, astrologer or not, everybody in this room, everybody online, everybody who's a magical person, already works with moon energy, lunar energy. We're called to that, a lot of us. So this is that end of astrology as opposed to the very left brain, rational sort of side of astrology. Okay. So lots of different definitions. One I think that I like is that the natal chart is a map of what our soul chose to sign up for in this incarnation. So as an astrologer, I really believe that people choose their moment of birth. And that has to do with what you have already experienced, your soul has already experienced as part of its soul stream, and what you hope to experience, right? So that means that the natal chart, the stars, the planets, they both reflect our internal state and shape it, but they do not cause it necessarily, right? The soul's quest is what causes us to be born at a certain time. And that's why we study astrology. It's one of the ways is to help us remember what it was we chose to do in this lifetime. And I want to just say, if there's any point in which I use a phrase or a term or something you have a question about, please interrupt me. Feel free to interrupt me. So that's an important point that maybe I'm just going to belabor a little bit, which is the stars do not cause us to do certain things. They do not dictate behavior or personality, but they definitely influence and shape how we see things and how we approach the world and how we, what kinds of experiences we have and what sorts of abilities we have, right? Okay, so astrology's best use, in my opinion, is as a tool, which we all mentioned already, is seeing it as a tool for discovery, right? Discovering what our direction is in this particular incarnation. The chart is like a map, of the toolkit that we have, that we were born into this incarnation with. Both strengths and weaknesses, both past life experiences and future hopes, both all of the beyond the binary, all the things, right? All right, so focusing on the moon in astrology, the moon has a whole series of different meanings, and you will hear different things from different astrologers, right? That's part of it. But I'm going to share with you, I think, a pretty common understanding of the moon, which is that it is a symbol of our feelings, our emotional state, especially our instinctual emotional responses. Okay. And so as a tool, when we know that natal placement and understand how the moon's influence, which is our emotional state, our instinctual emotional reaction state, is filtered through different signs, we can kind of have a better understanding of what triggers us, what makes us happy, what do we need to feel safe. If there's a single phrase you could sum up the moon with, it's what do we need to nourish ourselves and feel safe? For some people, our emotional life is very nourishing, and for other people, our emotional life is very challenging. Okay? This is one of the differences in where your moon placement is. Get into that just. Okay. So the placement in the natal chart helps us know what makes us happy or sad, what hurts us, right? What we need to feel nurtured and safe. A lot of astrologers will talk about how it is an indication of what our baseline needs are in order to create trust and a family. So family is very wrapped up in the moon, in the sense that a lot of astrologers would think about your closest emotional connections being with your family. That is not true for everyone. So it's good to kind of disconnect those things and say the moon is not necessarily only about family, it's about our closest emotional community, the people who we feel safest with. And so more traditional astrologers will often read the moon as, well, this is what your childhood was like, or what your home life is like. I think for us as magical astrologers, we can think about it as, again, this is maybe what our past was like what our past lives even were like, and what our emotional life is now, our emotional community. So when we create intentional community, we're doing the work of the moon, and each of us have different needs for doing that. And that's one of the things that that natal placement can help you with, which we'll get to in just a second. So when we create intentional community, some of us will need to have a lot of verbal communication about it, right? What are the ideas that we're sharing? How much do we agree on things? What other kinds of things do people need to create intentional, pleasant, intentional, healing, nurturing, intentional community? What other kinds of things do people need? Trust. Trust, definitely. And how do you build trust?
Interacting. Engaging with each other.
There's so many ways, right? Yeah, but one is basically through positive interactions, but other people need different things to feel trust.
Repetition.
Repetition is for trust or for intentional community?
For trust, I need to see the same thing over and over and over in order to trust it.
Consistency.
Yes.
Yeah. What else do you think?
Reliability.
Which
Reliability.
is kind of like consistency, but like
Yeah.
knowing you can rely.
Yeah. Anybody have something very different? Yeah.
Communication.
Communication, right? In what sense for you?
Just to like, I don't know, I think if you're sensitive about shifts in people and things, you really need the anchor of communication to make sure that you're on the same page.
Absolutely. Yeah, right.
Surrender.
I'm sorry?
Another one off of that would be support.
Mhm. So you feel
Have that-
supported,
Yeah, if you don't have somebody that, or in the community that supports system,
right?
it does feel a lot more like a void.
And we can feel supported in lots of different ways. Some people can feel supported by having their words heard. Some people can feel supported by being fed delicious food or having a safe space to occupy. And some people can feel supported by being inspired by their teacher, right? So this is part of where the emotional needs are met in many different flavors of ways, and that's what our moon sign can help us understand. Okay, so just following up on that, this helps us also understand what we can do to self-nurture. Right? When we know what we need to feel safe, what's our general direction for feeling safe? Are we somebody who needs a lot of communication to feel safe? Are we somebody who needs a lot of excitement and new ideas to feel safe and excited and inspired? Then we can kind of help ourselves nurture ourselves, right? Self-nurture, taking care of ourselves, making sure those needs are met. If it's in community or even just for ourselves, right? Can also help us develop positive self-image because we'll understand ourselves better. We'll understand what our emotional needs are, how we can feed those. Seeking out the right resources. If you're somebody who needs consistency to feel emotionally safe, then that's what you should seek, right? You need at least some of that in your life. It doesn't mean everybody has to be like that, but you need some of the people in your life to be like that. Maybe even your closest people, right? If you're somebody who needs excitement and it really embraces change in order to feel like you belong, right? In order to feel like you're part of the whole thing, then that's what you're going to seek, or it can help you know that that is something you should seek. So when you look at it that way from a magical perspective, this is kind of starting to sound a lot like what the goddess means to each of us, right? What does the goddess mean to us? The goddess means something different, obviously, to everybody, but in a lot of cases, she is our safe space. She is who nurtures us and inspires us and keeps us going, right? Especially those of us who came to this early on, we maybe felt the goddess calling us before we even understood why or what was going on, but we felt very drawn to an energy that was inescapable and nurturing and sort of feeding our souls. And this is where the moon sign and the goddess connect, is that while it's often interpreted as a sign of your mother or your family life, in magical space and goddess-centered space, that purpose is often served by the goddess herself, rather than our birth mother or our family at home. Another phrase you'll see often about the moon in astrology is as a description of our emotional needs and what our heart longs for. And this is where the natal sign is, it's what our heart longs for, how we see our needs being met. Not you or anybody else. It's each of us have a vision of how to do that. And that's where it can also be very helpful to understand this sign, because it gives you a sense of exactly what you need, what you are, what you bring. So again, in astrology, the moon is often the position that's read as the primary nurturer. This is something I just said a minute ago. Like it can be the mother, it can be the family, but in our case, I'm suggesting that you think about it as the goddess. So that primary nurturer is often who we receive personal care and guidance from. And the sign that the moon appears in gives us a sense of how we see that force occurring in our lives. Because I could stand up here and say that I'm a great mom, but each of you would have a different idea of what that meant, right? What a great mom means. Some people are going to think it has to do with communication. Some people are going to think it's going to have to do with the amount of time I spend on my kids. Some people are going to think about how much money I have in the bank account. It's all going to be different. So each of us understands what it means to be nurtured through the lens of the sign in which the moon appears. And in addition to being nurtured, the moon represents a sort of a subtle energy, right? A magical energy, a mystical nighttime seeing in the dark, operating with unconscious or subconscious knowledge, intuition, all the witchy stuff that we in this room are already doing and we're born to do, but we are all trying also to increase our ability to do. So these are the powers of intuitive wisdom, you might say, are really the powers of the moon. And again, a very powerful connection to the goddess. So if the moon sign represents how we understand intuitive wisdom, how we access our own intuitive wisdom, then it helps us sort of, but sometimes people say you're tuning a radio, right? When you're understanding astrology, you're getting closer to the clear vibration and eliminating some of the static. So in this case, I'm going to suggest also that the moon is a gatekeeper to the Great Mother for us, that Great Mother in the biggest possible sense. Intuition, sacred knowledge, suppressed history, all of those things that come not so much with the rational brain, but often through the gut or through the womb, through our bodies, through the experience of being embodied. And the moon sign is a guidepost for how our soul chose to embody the goddess in this lifetime. So not only is it how we access the goddess, it is who the goddess is through us in this world. And this is the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple version of this workshop, which is we are goddesses in this world. We are bringing the goddess to the earth. And so this is a reciprocal relationship we have with moon energy. Not only how we understand the goddess through a particular filter, but how we are the goddess in this lifetime, right? Because going all the way back to the beginning where the moon, where the natal chart represents our soul's choice in this lifetime, this is how we chose to come and bring goddess energy to the earth. It's a key or a memo from the universe about how to do it this time around. Obviously, we're going to have relationships with lots of goddesses. So while we have one natal position for our moon, a lot of us work with many different flavors of the divine feminine. And that's only because being human is about being in a relationship. We are always in reciprocal relationship. And so we may come into this earth, into this lifetime with a particular flavor that we are kind of chosen to embody, but we're also learning all the time about all the other flavors. And that's where all of our other practices come. Okay, so now does everybody know what sign their moon is in on their birth chart? Yes. Okay. And you know that astrology is split into the 4 elements that we talk about all the time, right? Air, fire, water, and earth. And so everybody know which element?
Born under?
Yep. So if you have a moon in Scorpio, Scorpio is a water sign, so you have a watery moon. There's a few that are tricky, like Aquarius seems like a water sign, but it's actually an air sign. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, you'll just ask. Yeah.
What's Gemini? Is that water?
That's an air sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Capricorn is earth.
Fire, right?
But I was pretty confident.
Anybody else? Anybody? Let's be sure so you get the most out of this next part of the workshop. Okay.
Taurus is earth, right?
Oh, yes. Anybody have a question here about that? I don't see anything in chat, so I think.
Rayna,
Hmm.
can you let us know again to look for our the position of the moon?
Yes.
Once again, I'm sorry.
The phase of the moon, you can find that at a site,
Yes.
astro-seek, S-E-E-K. We're going to get to that.
Thank you.
If you haven't done. Okay, so everybody knows the sign and they know what element their sign is. Wonderful. Okay, so this is a general sort of a guide, and then you can refine this by knowing a little bit more about each of the signs. But so example, fire signs. No, let's start with air. Wait, no, let's start with fire. Of course, I started with fire. Okay, so fire sign moons, your moon is in a sign that is a fire sign, embrace change. They'll even invoke change if their life becomes too predictable. Security, stability, much less important for them to feel safe. What they find safety in is excitement and in the new and in discovery. Right? And they'll especially find safety through their ability to express their will and to be validated for that. Not resonating with anybody? Oh, yeah. See how different? I mean, some of you probably are like, what? Right, so expressing your will and being validated, huge for the fire sign moon people. Okay. Earth sign, if your moon is in an earth sign, you have a preference for security and stability in your emotional life in particular, right? Not everything in your life, but in your emotional state. Very big emphasis on self-reliance. Self-reliance is a source of emotional strength. They find safety through work or other ways to demonstrate competency. Competency staves off emotional discomfort. Competency, huge word for the earth sign moons. That's working. Is that working for people? Yeah.
Competency and work help us to feel what?
Staves off emotional discomfort.
Oh.
If you have an earth sign moon. Work. Other forms of achievement, but competency, I think, is the best word. Okay, air signs. If your moon is in an air sign, right? That's Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra. You have feelings that are intensely analyzed and filtered through your intellect. Air sign moons sometimes say they don't have emotions, but they do have emotions. They just very much up in their head about their emotions. They think them through over and over and over again, right? They explore them as if from a distance. They like to debate and discuss and analyze their emotions. They find safety through communication and being heard. Lots of conversation and discussion of their emotional life and through the exchange of ideas and beliefs. So if they are talking to somebody and realize that they share a similar belief, that's a very emotionally satisfying moment for the moon in an air sign. And how they feel safe and trusting.
What did you say?
Yeah, okay, so air signs fine. Are you an air sign? So air signs find safety in discussion and conversation, especially about beliefs. Conversation and the exchange of ideas. So they find safety through sharing, discovering that somebody shares a belief of theirs. Or through having a person intensely discuss an idea or an emotion with them. They're the ultimate processors. Water signs, if your moon is in a water sign, this is a life experience through intense emotional experiences. Okay? Emotional intensity, if you had to sum it up. The emotions are vital, they're understood as vital, but also overwhelming. So moon in water sign people have a preference for clear boundaries and containers for their feelings. And they struggle to achieve that. And so they're not naturally something they might have, but they feel is very important to develop. And they find safety through places to be vulnerable. Vulnerability being the ultimate expression of trust for a water sign moon. So just in this little generalized kind of conversation about these things, you can understand that the moon really does vary. It varies a lot. Your emotional experience will vary a lot depending on the sign that you're in. And those things will then shape how you are the goddess in the world. So if you are a water sign moon, for example, and you know that vulnerability is a sacred act, you can help to create spaces and containers for people to be vulnerable. It may not be a life-changing experience for everybody, but because for the fire sign moon, people might be bored with that. But for those people who have the water moon, they will be profoundly moved by an experience like that. And likewise, if you're a teacher, if you're teaching students and you know that these students have the moon sign in air sign moons, you know you're going to be involved in a lot of conversation about what's going on and how they're feeling and reacting to the work. And then it might take a while because air sign moons, they don't necessarily know how they're feeling right away. They won't know until they've talked about it. It's really helpful with kids as well. Children are very much ruled by their moon sign because they're so much in the moment. right? They're in the moment and the moon changes all the time. And so their moon sign very much, it sort of shapes how they experience every day. More so for some kids than others, but a lot of kids. So if you have a child who is an earth sign kid, they need a regular routine, right? You can start to predict the kinds of things. And it's the same is true then for all of us, just big kids. So these are the ways in which this energy can shape your daily experience of yourself. But then these are the ways that you can also think about what goddess might you naturally connect to, right? So air goddesses, if you're a moon sign and an air sign, I think of Athena, right? I think of the goddesses of the intellect. That you, as a person born with your moon and air, is going to have a sort of a given and instinctual connection with that kind of energy. The energy of thinking and talking and discussing and debating and analyzing a thing, an experience or an emotion. I think of Kuan Yin, who's very cerebral in a way, very peaceful but of course, the goddess that connects is going to be up to you, right? There's not a definitive list. I mean, I tried to think about Hecate. What element does Hecate is too multifaceted to connect, but you as a water sign moon might gravitate to her watery aspects as something that makes sense to you. Carries a similar energy to your soul in this incarnation. Remember, you chose this incarnation, this moment, and this particular type of moon. And so if you're carrying that energy, you're carrying a water moon energy in this lifetime, you might instinctually connect with a watery goddess. That might be your sort of home base from which to explore other goddesses in relation. So I would suggest maybe if you have a moon and a fire sign, thinking about Bridget, thinking about Pele, thinking about Kali, the powers of fire and creativity and transformation and inspiration that are going to just click. The water goddesses, there's many. Yamaya is one, of course, Oshun, Aphrodite. Earth goddesses like the deer mother or Gaia, or the bear goddess, for those of you who have the moon and an earth sign. So I just wanted to take a moment and see if this is clicking, and if anybody who knows their moon position has that kind of a relationship with an elemental goddess, or goddess that sort of embodies that element they want to share. Yes, ma'am.
Mine is, my moon is in Virgo. So the whole self-sovereignty is a really huge thing I know about myself. And it's kind of, I find it kind of tricksy because the moon is supposed to be about relating to yourself, but also to others. And I just always sometimes feel like my relating to others is by how independent I can be, which makes it feel very conflicting. That's all I have is confliction. I have no conclusion.
I don't think of the moon so much as how we relate to others. I think it's very internal in a lot of, it's like sort of our precious little interior. You know, I in prepping for this, I was reading one astrologer who said, you know, if the chart is a house, the moon is your bedroom. It's probably your bedroom closet, actually. It's like you really just don't let people in there a whole lot. It's like your most private needs. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was just thinking about the fact that as a watery moon, and specifically as a Scorpio moon, everything you were saying really makes sense about emotional safety and security. And then I thought, and in containers, you know, and then I thought, and failing that, there's always the opportunity to turn into a bat and disappear into the night.
Yeah.
Like that is kind of that reclusing into one's moon can be also a source of safety, especially for a watery moon, where you don't always know. You might feel like in the world, you don't always know where you stand.
I love that. Yes, I think we should develop an ability to retreat into our moon in really as a safe space, of thinking about it as a safe space. So if it's the safe space is having somebody that you can talk through everything with, or if the safe space is having a routine that you do every day, or if the safe space is whatever, you know, flavor it takes, I think developing that and knowing you can go there when you need to, very, very good tool for us, very useful tool. And I think I'm almost out of time, right? Or, okay, so I'll just leave you with this that you can think about later in terms of the phase of the moon that you're born in. So we're all magical moon attuned people here. We know the phase of the moon shapes everything. And so think about it. If you look that up, these are some words to think about. So the new moon, if you're born on the new moon, you are an instigator. You are the birther. You are the gateway energy for something. Okay. If you are a crescent moon person, you are the revolutionary, something inspiring and different. Okay. Kind of a romantic sort of a energy to this. The first quarter is the manager.
Sacred strategy.
Just getting shit done. We got shit to do. Let's get there. If you're a full moon person, you're a magician. You're full of introspection and maybe a little self-absorption,
A little razzmatazz.
but also bringing the sparkle. Yep.
I have a question about that, because like, clearly we're not like at 50%, you know what I mean? So would you say that that kind of goes like a 10%
Yeah.
way, or 5%, or?
Astrologically, there's a range for each of these things.
Okay.
So that's Astro-Seek site has gives you a degree reading, which indicates where you are in this range. So the moon and the sun have to be 180 degrees apart for you to be a full moon, but there's an orb for that, just like everything, every other aspect in astrology. It's about 10 degrees. So it could be 170 to 190.
I think it does, do eclipses have anything to do with that?
What do you think?
Well, I was born in the full moon full effects. And so I've always wondered, I've kind of been looking into that, whether.
You should look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you're born on an eclipse, you got a big pocket full of magic there that is also hidden and deliberately obscured. And so, yes, definitely keep digging into that and thinking about it. Yeah. And then just the last one, the waning moon. The waning moon is the teacher. That's when we have time for introspection. We have time to reflect. We have time to pause and think about what is happening next before we get to noon. I would love to hear your thoughts on this later. If anybody wants to, you can. I do have a website that you can find me on. It's just raynatemplebee.org, and no, it's .com. .com. I always do that. Or I'm happy to talk to you here. But Rayna Templebee, just like it sounds. 2 E's. 2 E's. Templebee. Thank you very, very much.
Seriously, beautiful. And I just want to say quickly here, for those who have done the priestess training, what she just said about your moon sign and goddesses, I feel is revolutionary to the thought of who sits with you at the center of your mandala, who you choose to sit with you at the center of your mandala. So just like, I'm going to go away and think about that. And thank you so much, Priestess Rayna. And over here in the chat, we have lots of loving comments and some people who are interested in looking at their Vedic placements. So absolutely, I think you can, work with whichever system works for you. So we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we will be back with Shannon Lugo at 3 o'clock. So at 3:05, we'll start.
That's so good.